So you knew I was going to talk about this, right? This is nothing new, first of all. All this stuff has been known for a very long time. And this is what I was talking about in terms of institutional child abuse. Like I said, get used to hearing that phrase from me, institutional child abuse. There's no better example of institutional child abuse than what was done to the Native Americans and many others through the process of quote unquote colonialism. But it's not really colonialism, it's civilization. You're taking free people and you're turning them into citizens, city dwellers. And this process has been repeated many times over and over and over and over again. And that's why the mental illness is so deep. Not just our society, but all societies across the globe. Except, of course, those few indigenous people who fled to the deepest jungles, the driest deserts, the coldest mountaintops, the people who fled away from civilization. Those are the only people who retain their mental health. All the rest of us are insane. And you can easily tell that we're insane by the way we act and by the way we treat each other and by the way we treat the environment. And that's what the process of civilization is. It's turning healthy, sustainable, ethical people into us, citizens, cancer cells that just eat up the environment, eat up nature, chew it up until it's gone, and that's it. And we die with the host, which is our ecosystem. Now, of course, this was just the first one, I think. They found another mass grave, and then they found another mass grave. Like I said, this is nothing new. And furthermore, this is not the first place this has happened. These mass graves can be found all across North America, obviously, Canada and the United States, but also Central and South America, anywhere the Catholic Church had a free reign. And that applies first to Ireland. You know, all the methods of oppression and genocide that were carried out upon the Native Americans and the black slaves, the scientific programs of oppression, all those were first practiced on the Irish when the Irish were occupied by the English. So this is nothing new. This is a cycle that goes on and on and on. And so while they focus on this and they make a big stink about it, there's no understanding. Renewed calls for Catholic Church apology. Renewed calls for Catholic Church apology after mass grave. Another mass grave has been discovered of children that you murdered, hundreds of children that you murdered. Can we get an apology? These people still want a damn apology. Canada bodies at Indigenous school not isolated incident. Yeah, you can say that again. Not isolated at all. Which is talked about in this next article. The revelation of Canada's cultural genocide against Native people should shake the world into a historical reckoning that extends beyond empty apologies. So this writer is not content with apologies, but what do they want? And what is their historical reckoning? 751. So now the number has increased to 700. It went from 215 to 751 within weeks. And these, as I said before, these mass graves were found all throughout Ireland, wherever they had boarding schools, where the children were under control of the Catholic priests and nuns. You can find mass graves. But that's not the total. It's just another one. So it's almost 1,000 in total. Genocide has historically been used to eradicate the identity of marginalized groups in order to eliminate their space in a place's history. That's weird. No, that's... What a bizarre sentence. Erase the identity of marginalized groups. No. You got it backwards, honey. They're not marginalized until their identity has been erased. First you erase their identity, then you marginalize them. You have that completely backwards. From speaking their native languages, they were separated from siblings, prevented from practicing traditional faiths, stripped of traditional clothes, long hair was cut off, and they were given new Christian names. Oh yeah, and we sent our very best rapists and torturers and sickos from the Catholic menagerie to torment them deliberately. And this was done to African Americans, Native Americans, Irish people. This was done all around the world. And make no mistake, this was done in Europe as well. These measures were part of a coherent policy to eliminate Aboriginal people and assimilate them into the mainstream against their will. That sentence right there describes civilization in a nutshell. And it also describes institutional child abuse. Because civilization wants slaves. Civilization is controlled by people who are emotionally needy and who are emotionally broken. Therefore, they seek to enslave others to fill the void of their own emotional emptiness. And that's why these torture schools were instituted all across the planet. That's why institutional child abuse is never spoken of, even in an article that is about institutional child abuse. That is about the most fundamental aspect of institutional child abuse, which is assimilating free people and turning them into civilized slaves. This is the crux of civilization right here. Institutional child abuse as a directed program of scientific abuse, torture, and rape to mentally and physically murder these people so that you can turn them into factory slaves. And then you can send them to work in a Coca-Cola factory where they suck all the water out of the planet and turn it into Coca-Cola. And then you can pat yourself on the back because you gave them jobs and you civilized them. Think how many people actually think this way, that they think that you're doing these people a favor by civilizing them. I can think of many, many millions of people who think just like that, and they live all around me right here. You know what? I'm going to keep saying the phrase institutional child abuse until I'm blue in the face, until other people start saying it as well. This is the epitome of institutional child abuse. And institutional child abuse is the founding aspect of civilization. People do not become your slaves, whether to work in a farm as agriculture slaves, whether to work in a factory as factory slaves, whether to work in a mine as mining slaves. Did I mention my great-grandfather died in a mining cave-in? He died under a pile of fucking rocks, trying to save his subordinates from a cave-in. Free people do not do these things. Why on earth would you go dig rocks out of the ground when you can run around the forest and hunt and get free food? Only weak, insane, mentally ill people want to be part of civilization. And that describes me, and it describes you, and it describes all of us. Because we are not sustainable. Civilization is controlled by mentally ill people, and it always has been. And because they themselves are weak, they want to eliminate anyone who's strong. This is what I call cutting everyone else's legs off to make yourself look taller. That's civilization in a nutshell. And that's institutionalized child abuse in a nutshell. And that's these re-education, child rape and torture schools in a nutshell. Look at the organizations that are behind these things, and look how many people still to this day pledge allegiance to them and would kill for them and would scream at you if you point this stuff out to them. Now, of course, the younger generation, they're not believing in the old religion as much. But you know what? You know what these younger kids think the solution to everything is? That's right, money. Don't give the natives just an empty apology, but don't give them their land back either. Give them money, give them subsidies, give them welfare. Complete the process of turning them into civilized slaves like the rest of us. Because we just can't stand to see free people when we're over here working as Kmart slaves for our entire lives. We can't stand to see free people running out around the woods and hunting and being free. Just can't stand to see that. And we'll tell ourselves that we're strong and they're weak. Because lies are all we have left in civilization. Just a bunch of lies that could be easily seen through if people weren't so emotionally invested in them. And that's why these re-education and torture schools have been known about forever, but nobody cares. People keep coming to this country to join in the parade, to join in the exploitation. The only people who have any claim to any ethical reason for being here were Native Americans and African Americans who got dragged here in chains. But look what those two groups of people did as soon as they got their quote-unquote freedom. They joined the parade. They joined the military in high numbers. Look how many Native Americans and African Americans joined the military still to this day to go do to other countries what was done to them for a paycheck. Nobody is above this shit that's happening. It's not all just putting blame at someone, ask for an apology, cut a check. Until there's an understanding of what institutional child abuse is, this planet will continue to spiral into a technological pollution nightmare where nothing but cancerous-ridden beings will be staggering around in a very short period. And it will be a place not worth living in. It's almost that already. There's no clean water. There's no clean air. There's no clean food. There's no honest people. There's no ethical people. There's no sustainable societies to be a part of. There's just me. And politics. What can I get from me and my little group? So let's not pretend that anything's going to change in regards to these native people. Their cultures are still going to go extinct. Their languages are still going to go extinct. They're never going to get their lands back. They're never going to get a chance to save their little part of the environment. All they're going to get is a check. And maybe they're so civilized already that that's all they want. Civilization has done its work into turning us into the monsters that we are. And it was all through schools like this, throughout the world and throughout history. Institutional child abuse. It's the Great Plague. Institutional child abuse is the Great Plague.